Hello everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today I am back from the Orlando meetup, which was a ton of fun. Was able to meet a lot of really awesome people and have some really great conversations. So thank you to everyone who made it out, and thank you for those who were not able to make it out for your thoughts and prayers, especially while I was traveling. A lot of things to talk about, and we will cover everything that happened over the live stream, giving over the weekend, and also giving some special shout outs to people who gave me some stuff as well. One thing I'm wearing right now, which is a pretty awesome shirt, which I plan on wearing to school today, as it is Halloween, and hey, nothing's better than J.R. Tolkien talking about evil. But before we get any further, though, please make sure you smash that like button, lap that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, and also smash the little rumble button as well as we do this box office breakdown where Black Adam had a decent drop domestically, 59%. But if we look at the worldwide total for this movie, let's just say danger, danger, danger. Black Adam could be in a situation where it ends up being a pretty significant financial loss for Warner Brothers, which is really not all that surprising for Warner Brothers specifically, because Warner Brothers has been notorious for making these $200 million films that never are able to make their money back for a wide variety of reasons, at the very least at the box office. But it is going to be interesting to see where Black Adam goes from here, specifically in the international market. In the domestic marketplace, it's pretty much a done deal. The film's not going to be anywhere close to one of the biggest domestic releases of the year, or even the past few years, but internationally is going to be where ultimately the make or break for this movie has been, and that's what I've been saying from the very beginning. But right now, the movie is tracking just really around the same amount of money as we saw for the film Shang-Chi, which had the opposite. Shang-Chi actually did did much better domestically, and will likely still end up beating Black Adam's domestic total by the end of its run. But I would say that right now Black Adam is poised to very easily take over the international number for Shang-Chi, which was not a huge international release, but was a much bigger domestic release. And again, it was one of those surprising things when the movie came out, just how successful it was domestically. So we'll talk about that in a little bit when we do a fuller breakdown of the film. Ticket to Paradise came in at a 39% drop, so apparently there's enough people out there who have an interest in this George Clooney film. So, hey, I still have no interest in going to see it, but apparently there are enough people who are, and let's just say that it has a chance of being able to make its money back, as it had a good start internationally and is continuing to hold pretty strong here in the domestic market, and with not a whole lot of competition coming out over the next several weeks, really up until Wakanda Forever, which could be a massive train wreck when all is said and done, at the very least on the international scale. I still am holding to what I've said previously for months now, that I think the domestic numbers are going to be bigger than what people expect. It's not going to get anywhere close to the 700 million that the first film made, but I think it's going to do a little bit better than expected. And we'll talk about that more when we get closer to the actual film release. Coming number 3 is Pray for the Devil. And someone at the comments section tried to point out to me about the way pray is spelled. I recognize that. I still have a problem with it either way, because it's a play on words. It's a play on words. It's a pun. And it's an evil one. It made $7 million. No budget being reported for this film, though we can imagine probably, at least as of the recording of this video, no budget was being reported. And so we can assume that the film probably didn't cost all that much. And so it'll probably be able to make its money back pretty easily. Pretty low, I feel, for a Halloween-themed movie coming out Halloween weekend. But hey, it is all Hallows Eve. We are currently with the vigil of All Saints Day. And so, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and pass by that movie. The movie Smile, the horror film that is continuing to do very well for Paramount, made another $5 million, well on its way to $100 million domestically and potentially $200+ million internationally, which is a massive gain for this film. And hey, Paramount continues to win this year. Halloween ends at another 52% drop. On Halloween weekend, you would expect the film to maybe hold a little bit better, but hey, the fact that it was able to survive to some extent, that 80% drop early on in its release, is definitely a better sign than what anyone would have expected it to do. So, hey, the film actually has a good chance of getting to $100 million worldwide. It already made its money back opening weekend, so everything is a win from this point forward for Universal. La La Crocodile continuing to have strong holds as well, up to $50 million worldwide at this point. Still doesn't really have a good chance of breaking even, but hey, it is definitely holding as well as any film should. The movie Till, which started off with a very small release, has added 1,900 screens, almost 2,000 screens, so it saw a massive increase in its release. Again, this is going to be a film that I can't track, though, because of it having that staggered release, but we can imagine the film probably won't make all that much money, as it is definitely a more independent film. I know River gets so upset whenever there's these independent films. I don't know why I always say international by default, but anytime there's these independent films that have these kinds of releases, makes it very hard to do the tracking of the box office, at least to make projections and to be able to try to predict the future. Also, I mentioned I'd talk about Terrifier 2, but Terrifier 2, from what I was told over the weekend at the very least, may have even been like a crowdfunded thing, like where it was a very small, like under $1 million budget. So the fact that the film has made $7.6 million and it's been as the top 10 movies over the past 4 weeks is pretty darn impressive. And so even though I have no desire to go see the film, hey, kudos to them for having a success. And then you have other films that didn't even make it into the top 10 because there's still releases waiting, I guess, for their chart to be fully updated. But The Woman King is still making a little bit of money. As I said, pretty much that film is done making money. And so the chance of that film making its money back, not very likely. Don't Worry, Darling still has a chance by the end of its run to make its money back, but it's becoming less and less likely every single weekend. I definitely admit that fact. But I do believe that it will be able to squeeze out just enough worldwide to be able to hit its break even. And at the very least, we will definitely be able to see that film make its money back on its home release. But we can at the very least say that it'll either be just barely a box office flop or just barely a box office success, which really isn't all that much of a success because if you're not getting any real return on your investment, is it really a win at the end of the day? Going into the individual films now, we got Black Adam, which made it was now at $250 million. And this is the reason why they have reason to be concerned, because this is now past around $230 million of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which is another film I was comparing it to. So I'm going to go ahead and take that one out of the fray. Whereas this film is a little bit below where we saw Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings at the same time of its release. So here is my box office projections chart, which I can go back in time just a little bit to be able to try to have this comparison. So as I mentioned, we were going to look at the film in the international, or rather in the opening weekend versus the second weekend. So Sonic the Hedgehog 2 had 231, so that's why this film obviously has surpassed that amount of money. It's even surpassed that of Uncharted, so now that film really can't be in comparison anymore. Eternals actually would be a decent film to compare this one to as well. Eternals was at $281 million, and that film was definitely a bigger international release overall in comparison to a movie like Shang-Chi, which was a much bigger domestic release as far as films are concerned. That film ended up topping out around $400 million, which is pretty much the story. Again, basically what we can look at as far as the numbers are concerned is there's a very good chance there's a $257 million of Shang-Chi. So the fact that Black Adam is at 250, meaning it's behind where Shang-Chi was at the same time of its release, and right now we're seeing a difference where Black Adam is doing better internationally, whereas Shang-Chi did better domestically, we can then have assumption that we might end up seeing those films end around the same amount of money. So $400 million, I would say, $400 to $430 million is probably the likely outcome for this movie. The problem is that with that massive $200 million budget, that means the chances of this film making its money back is actually not quite good. Basically, and someone had asked this, one of the persons, there was a couple I was able to talk to over the weekend who wanted my quick thoughts on the box office, because obviously I wasn't able to do a box office breakdown yesterday. And so I was like, yeah, you know what? I'll pull up the numbers right now. I haven't looked at them actually. And when I saw the $250 million number, I was like, oh, well, that's actually pretty easy math, because this film now has to double what it's done the first 2 weeks of its release to make its money back. And though that is possible, there are films that have done that. The chances of it are not historically likely, meaning that a lot of times most films don't double what they've made in the first 2 weeks, especially when it comes to big superhero films. They tend to make the majority and the bulk of their money in their first 2 weeks and then have slow roll-offs by the very end. And because of the amount of money they make in those first 2 weeks, are normally able to break even by maybe week 3 or week 4. This movie is not likely going to break even until towards the end of its release, unless we start to see some impressive numbers from the international marketplace, or if they are able to get a China release for the film. I know that's something that has been talked about. I don't know, as of the time of the recording of this video, whether they have done that yet. Again, it was not in their original release schedule, but if they're able to do that, that changes the game a little bit. But as of right now, the film's chances of getting to $500 million are just not likely, and that's just based off of historical standards of most films not doubling what they've made in the first 2 weeks of the release. Most of the time, on average, we see about 60% of the entire box office total being made in the first 2 weeks of release, meaning that this film's likely outcome is somewhere between $400 and $450 million, which sounds nice on paper, but compared to the $200 million budget of the film, it means a financial loss. And so we could see this movie end up being a $50 million loss by the end of its run when all is said and done. Putting this up against Shang-Chi, as I mentioned, domestically, Shang-Chi, a much stronger film. At the same time of its release, it had $144 million versus Black Adam's $111. However, the end result for the international for Shang-Chi was $207 million, and I think that this film is easily going to be able to surpass that by the end of either next weekend or the following, as it's already at $139 million internationally. So the international number is going to be that make or break for the movie, and it's going to be interesting to see where this film ends up by the end of its run, because the domestic market isn't helping all that much, though 59% is definitely not the worst drop for a superhero movie. It's actually a pretty strong hold for most superhero movies. For Dwayne Johnson films, it's actually not the very best that we have seen. And so it's interesting, to say the very least, that, hey, guess what? Dwayne Johnson, and this goes back to that old adage, right? Hollywood superstars, they don't really sell tickets anymore. But obviously, as I mentioned, he is a much bigger influence on the international versus the domestic. And so because the film really, I personally didn't think it was very good at all. I think some people might be letting that end credit scene or mid-credit scene, the only credit scene, kind of influenced them, because it was a pretty amazing one, right? Having Henry Cavill back is pretty awesome. But at the same time, the movie is just a bit of a mess, and it features characters to certain extents that are okay, and then it doesn't feature characters enough who should be. Pierce Brosnan should have a much bigger role in this movie. And so I think that those types of mistakes that they ended up making ultimately will lead to this film's demise. Ticket to Paradise at $119 million. I don't care about this movie, but apparently enough people do. I don't quite know why. I have not seen a single trailer for this film. I don't know where the money's coming from. I guess that it's the older audiences going out to see this movie, I guess. Pray for the Devil at $7 million. Again, I'm just going to move past that. Smile at $185 million, very, very likely to get to $200 million, off the charts for historical standards. Halloween Ends, again, I'm just so happy that this is down, even though it's underperforming in almost every single metric, because they spent nothing on this movie, and clearly no effort on this movie either. It's still going to be able to make its money back, unfortunately. Actually, already did. La La Crocodile, $50.6 million, again, middle of the pack, doing pretty well, but it just seems like not enough people knew the property, and not enough names were attached to the film to kind of get it out there. I mean, I think they were probably thinking of a Paddington situation where maybe enough people would get good word of mouth and families would go to see it. It just doesn't seem to be happening for this movie. I guess they just don't have the same type of kind of push that the people behind Paddington were very passionate about it. And I think that's one of the reasons why it was successful. Whereas for this one, I don't really, again, know that much all about it. Terrifier 2, again, I have no interest in it, but $7.6 million on a micro budget is pretty amazing. As I said, some people at the meetup said that actually it may have even been like a crowdfunded thing. So the fact that they were able to do this, even if it was just, again, less than $1 million budget, is very, very impressive, to say the least. Let's see. Woman King, $87.2 million. Yep. Good to see this film likely to be end up as a box office flop. Don't Worry, Darling at $83.5 million. Again, there's still a chance. There's still a chance for the film to make its money back. I don't really care one way or the other. Doesn't look like it doesn't. It's not a film that interests me whatsoever. But again, that chance is still out there. And then Amsterdam, so glad to see a massive film like this become a box office flop. Looking at the actual numbers themselves, so we can go ahead and update this charting, because we like to do charting here at OMB Reviews. I don't know why. Oh, that's right, because I didn't update the Excel chart. So we'll go ahead and use my raw chart. This is the chart that has all the films from all time. Excel only lets me put in so many films at a time. So anyway, Black Adam, because it's at $250 million by the end of its second week, right now I'm projecting it to make somewhere between $357 and $500 million. So either it's going to end up being a loss of $85 million, around that, or it's going to make just over $166,000. So that just shows you the chances of this film making its money back are not likely. Is it possible? Sure. We could see this film with a fantastic run. We could see fantastic legs on this movie, and it could very well will itself past $500 million and end up making a few million in profit. At this point in time, based on historical standards, though, it's an upward battle for that movie, and it likely won't be able to do so without a lot of international help. Ticket to Paradise, we can't really make any projections on, because that international number was several weeks out from the domestic release. So again, my metrics only work based off the first 2 weeks of release, and that's, again, where you've seen most of the consistency on that. Pray for the Devil, $7.7 million opening weekend. No budget being reported there, so hard to say one way or the other. But as you see, Black Adam still $150 million in the red, still has a ways to go. But right now, projected, to likely be a financial loss, around $42 million if we see the average run for this movie. And again, this film could very well be above average, below average, and that will ultimately determine how much or how little it loses based off of this. The chances of it making money are not likely, but hey, still possible nonetheless. 18 million in the red still for Ticket to Paradise, but based off of the numbers that we're seeing, seems like there's an audience for it, so it still very well could make its money back. Halloween Ends is already at 26.8 million in the black, so it's just, again, amazing. Film that's not really doing all that well by most metrics. Made its money back because of a small budget. La La Crocodile is getting close to having doubled the first 2 weeks of its release, but still is 44 million out. 44 million in the red based off of the numbers that we have. So the chance of the film making its money back still not very likely at all. Amsterdam expected to be $100 million flop, which is, again, fantastic to see. Smile, 86 million in the black, more than doubling what it made in the first 2 weeks of its release. Bros is continuing just to be a flop. Don't Worry, Darling, currently still 2 million in the red. Again, still has a chance of making it back, but again, every single week that goes by, the chances become less and less since it only added about 1 million or so worldwide. By the end of this past weekend. Whether it's a loss or not, it's minimal, because even if it did hit the break even, it would hardly be a success, because again, how much return on that investment do you get? If you barely get anything, then not a very good result for it. We also have The Woman King at 22 million in the red, and so continuing to show that, hey, even though you were able to convince a lot of people with your propaganda, you were not able to convince the audience at large. But those were the films that I was able to update. What were y'all's thoughts about this? I'm going to do my Geeks and Gamers box office breakdown video hopefully later today. And thank y'all again very much for your love and support over the weekend. If I saw you, let me know in the comment section what your favorite part of the weekend was. And again, thank you to everyone who was thinking and praying for me, especially as I was traveling. I drove 8 hours on Saturday to get into Orlando at 8 p.m. Got back at midnight last night here, and now I'm about to head off to get ready and head off to school. So anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, that fire button on Odyssey. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Smash the rumble button as well. Shout out to Tina B, Empress of the Universe. Check her out on her show Soup to Nuts, which she does with the amazing Valkyrie Stephanie B. And as always, God bless and blessed All Hallows Eve. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my locals, Patreon, and Subscribestar members at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above. Starting off with Patreon, Father Luca Illick, Garrett Searles, Joe Horn, Jaime Ari Hymason, Jeff Toon, Jonathan Carney, Laura, the Modern Major General Story, Orange Hat Reviews, who you can check out over on YouTube at the channel with the same name, Rosetta Allen, who also has a YouTube channel called Eagle Rider, and Miss Martin Muses, who also has a YouTube channel by the same name. Thank y'all very much, my Patreon supporters. And also for my Subscribestar peeps, Matt317, who you can check out over on Twitch at Matt317, Storm Tracker, The R, Fast Reaction, Mr. Roy, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and ZK-Man, who you can check out over at xtheboundaries.co. And lastly, my locals members, Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan, How About a Hockey Player, UAB Mad Dog, Mike Jackson for the win, J.H. Schwalbach, and the great lawyer Robert Barnes. Thank you all so very much for your support. If you would like for your name to be shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, please make sure to check out the top link in the video description where you can sign up over on Patreon, Subscribestar, or Locals. You get access to things not only like shoutouts, but also to giveaways of 4Ks and Blu-rays, an exclusive podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger every single month, and also the Chosen of Valhalla live stream for my Chosen of Valhalla members, which we do once a month, and it is a lot of fun. So all of this and plenty of more content, check out those links in the link tree in that top comment down below. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. A blessed October to everyone out there. Blessed month of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And as always, God bless.